Yeah. What's up, Toronto? How you doing? Yeah, I know you're all hungry. Maybe some of you are a bit tired, but there's no time for that now. There will be lunch in a bit, don't worry. And I thought I'd start with a joke, but jokes are always lame, so I start with some facts and numbers. But first, who of you Googled something today? Who of you already? I see hands going up here and there, okay. The other of you, are you sure? I'm pretty sure everyone, at least like, oh, how to get to the conference, maybe, what talks are coming up. And there are like 8.6 billion searches a day. Thanks. 8.6 billion searches a day. Which means, well, per second, roughly doing some math, around 100K searches per second. Okay, so far so good. But now we think Google. Everywhere, sure, right? Let's see how many websites, like percentage-wise, actually get visitors from Google. So just think of, okay, we have so many websites out there on the web, maybe your portfolio, maybe the documentation of Vue, the conference website, and now I want to think of a number in your head, like how many percentage, like 10%, 100, 95, and if you have a number, in 3 seconds you should just yell it out and tell me the number. 3, 2, 1. How about good ones? Good ones, I heard 1, that's a bit too low. Also 90 is a bit too high. It's actually not even 10%. So if we take a closer look at that chart over here, a closer look, there. 0 visits, 90.63%. And that's crazy, right? But we want to make sure that your websites, be it your own portfolio or your company's website, is not in that 90%, but way more up. So welcome to my talk, the Vue-niverse of SEO and covering the secrets. Yeah, a few words about me. I'm Alex. I am a web engineering consultant by day. I'm also a speaker instructor, giving workshops and talks, as you can see here right now. And I'm also on the Nux team, but we have heard lots of good Nux talks today. Will we hear more? So I won't go all in that time. And also, I'm on Twitter, X, YouTube, Twitch, doing some content creation around Vue and Nuxt. I have my own website and blog that I regularly use. And of course, I'm also on GitHub. So let's go for the Vue-niverse of SEO. Let's navigate through it. And the first question is, what actually is SEO? And people might think, yeah, it's rocket science. But don't worry. Don't worry, it's not. It is, and that might sound a bit weird, it is user-focused. Now you think, well, search engine optimization, how can that be user-focused? Well, also search engines, what they want is to not only show you some advertisements, but also to actually give you good results. So you use them again and not say, the search results are not good there, I'll try somewhere else. So they also want to deliver the best content for you. That's why user focus is an important part of SEO. And SEO is easy to learn, but hard to master for sure. And also it needs continuous improvements. It's not enough to say, oh yeah, I changed some things here and there and we're good to go. This is sadly not how it works. It's more of a marathon, not a sprint. It's also frequently changing because search engines, mainly Google, they do some updates, they rank some content differently and can be quite frustrating, especially at large scale. But luckily, that's not happening like every day. So don't worry too much about it for now. And of course, now we know a bit, okay, what is SEO? What do we have to think about? But when do we actually need it? And it's pretty simple. If you have public parts of your project, like let's say you have an amazing software as a service applications and everything's behind authentication, you don't need SEO for that, but you probably have some kind of landing pages, right? Marketing stuff. Your portfolio, as I mentioned before, like business sites. Also maybe forums or help databases, FAQs, all that. And of course, the good old blog that you maybe post once a year or twice still, that's public facing. And it's not really relevant for anything behind authentication because the search engines, they can't really get there. So there's no content for them. They say, okay, I have no access. Fine. Sure. And also, if the content is more short-lived, So I don't know, a couple minutes, a couple seconds. Well, I would say up to a couple hours or a day. It's not really worth optimizing for that. And of course, there are certain SEO galaxies, so categories, so to say. We have on-page, the on-page galaxy, which is mainly about content, about keywords, UX as well, user-focused, right? Meta tags, and so on and so on. We have the off-page galaxy, off-page category, which is about link building, also very important. So why would people link to your site? Because maybe you have good content, but how to get that? Social media as well, being there, brand awareness, citations, so basically people bringing in your company's name, your own name, without linking to your site, just mentioning, oh, hey, that guy or that company. An authority, so somehow you have to prove that your project is the expert in a certain domain. And then there's a third one, which is the technical galaxy. So we talk about page speed, we talk about security, and also a sitemap, for example. And in this talk, because, well, time is running, already 6 minutes in, we will focus mainly on two of them. And why? Why on the 1 and 3? Why not on off-page? Well, off-page needs a bit of time. It's not that technical, because we can talk about any of these categories before, right? And especially with on-page and technical, you as developers, you're good to go. You can have the most impact on that. OK, and we use our lovely Vue, right? So we all know what an SPA does, right? We have HTML, but the HTML is not there straight away, but Vue is generating the HTML through JavaScript for us. But what happens? What happens when there wouldn't be JavaScript, or when it's broken? Well, that will happen. You see? Nothing. Or maybe, if you build the site pretty nicely, we have some kind of loading spinner there saying, hey, and then maybe at some point error message, it's broken. So with an SPA, you definitely have no content or like some static parts of that when JavaScript is disabled or not loaded. And now the first question is this a problem for search engines? Like, can Google understand JavaScript? And the answer is, yeah, OK, sure. It can now. Well, if you go back a bit in time, that was very different. And even nowadays, there are search engines that don't really render the site, but just look for HTML. And if you have just a JavaScript application, there's not much there. So there are some caveats for sure. And let's have a look at some of them. Because we start very simple with there is no interaction when you crawl. So Google, well, takes your website or any search engine. They will not click on buttons, right? They will check, are there links, and then maybe follow them. But they won't open modals. They won't, I don't know, do that funny scroller thing on the side. No. That's not happening. Also, they won't grant permissions. So if you say, hey, I want to have your camera image up there, no, that won't happen. And also, that sounds a bit weird, but there is no scrolling. So what Google's actually doing is they just set the viewport to a very, very, very high one, like over 90K pixels, and then take a snapshot of the site. So yeah, that's a bit interesting and good to know. And also, there's no data persistence. So if you say, hey, let's store some stuff in the cookies and local storage, there will be a new request for every site, and that will be fully free of any kind of state there. And there is something called a crawl budget. So your site has internally a certain budget of resources. And if you load 2 megabytes of JavaScript for every request, because Google, if they find a link, they won't just click it and they say a nice transition. They will do it in a new process and have an initial request again. So if the crawl budget is reached, they will stop indexing your page for a little bit and then maybe continue later because they want to share the resources fairly. And, well, 2 megabytes of JavaScript are also quite a bit. Also, it's interesting that there's no kind of generic timeout. So Google sometimes can wait for your content. If you say, oh, it's async, I need to pull in stuff from your API. But it's a bit tricky and can still lead to some issues with content that's not indexed if it's added too late. And some of these caveats are actually very specific to SPAs. Like, have you ever shared an SPA on, let's say, WhatsApp, LinkedIn, any kind of social media, and you see that there might be no previews, like no title, no OG image, because you can set them, but if you don't provide them in the HTML straight away, crawlers from, let's say, Discord or WhatsApp or Twitter, they won't go through, they won't wait until the HTML is generated. They will check the HTML straight away, say, oh, it's not there, I don't show anything. Or, oh, it's the static placeholder, that's it. And also, of course, as we just discussed, JavaScript can be brittle. Because, well, HTML is more forgiving. You make a little mistake here, the browser fixes it up, no problem. For JavaScript, well, a wrong semicolon, parentheses, boom, nothing works anymore. Also, when we come to the router, especially the Vue router, you might know the fragment routing mode, right? That little hash or the little route sign at the end. That's not working well for SEO, so you need an actual URL. You need a real URL. That fragment is used to basically fake the URL by having just one page, but it won't work because that fragment part never reaches the server, never ever. So we need real URLs. And yeah, that's a bit more work, of course, if you then transform your SPA in an MPA with, well, still SPA capabilities. But if you want to hear one takeaway from the talk, it's very important. If you still have an SPA, it's this one. Just because Google can index your page, it doesn't mean it will rank well. Because it might not be fast, it might not be optimized, it might take too long. And that brings us to a little conclusion. If you're especially from a competitive space, pure client-side rendering might not be enough for you. A Vue SPA is amazing, but it might not be enough. So what else if not client-side rendering? Answer is server-side rendering. Amazing. So we can do technically SSG, so pre-rendering, server-side rendering on build time. If you have like a blog, you don't need to have a server running all the time. We can have incremental static regeneration, SSR on the fly. We can mix that all together. And if you use Vue, well, then you might want to use Nuxt for that. So one option would be to say, OK, we have some route rules there. So we can say, look, SSR is by default set to true. That works. And in the route rules, we say, OK, every page, we have this incremental static regeneration. So it's cached for at least 30 seconds, and then it's refreshed in the background through stale value validate. And in our blog, we just want to generate them statically. And there are way, way more route rules. Another funny thing is, an experimental feature actually, that you can define them in the page components. So instead of defining them in your Nuxt config, you can do that through components. So only in page components, that's the only downside, but it makes sense. And you have to enable that through an experimental flag in your Nuxt config. So you have to define it in the page components, and everything else that is related to the path, like in defined page meta, the alias or path options, they're not respected. If you need that, you have to use the Nuxt config instead. So how does it look like? Well, let's take a look here. OK, we have that example saying, in this case, SSR false, all right, and set, for example, some headers, like my custom headers. And we use a define route rules function there that will be, in the end, removed and converted into these route rules in your, let's say, pages experimental.vue components. So there are a couple of options to define them, and that's a little insight there. So OK, we say we use SSR, but what can we do for our SEO now except just rendering the HTML straight away? Well, let's set it up. First, who knows this application? Hands up. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Great. Can anyone say what it is? Name? Yeah, exactly. It is Google Search Console. There it is. Correct. So if you have a project and it's not up there, like your personal portfolio, register it, verify it, and you get all the data of like, oh, which search queries on Google does your project rank for, which pages, which countries, on which average search end result you are you on the first page? And it's very insightful. You see how many people actually click, and you also see if there are some problems with your site. So this is really useful to set up, especially for your own project. OK, we set this stuff up. Now, what do we need to achieve good SEO? What is it? Well, we'll go through a few things here. I've always categorized them either technical or on-page, and the effort. So 1 rocket is super easy. 5 rockets are a bit more. And we start very simple with some basic security. So it's a technical task, and it's low effort. For example, what you always should do is you should enable HTTPS. except on localhost, of course. But if it's deployed, enable HTTPS. You don't need to pay anything for certificates nowadays. It's free. Just do it, because also sometimes you can't use some web APIs if they're not in the secure context. Also, you want to use security headers and set them, or for example, also use a content security policy. Also very important. And the end, HTTPS itself, if you don't have it, it's a ranking factor, so Google will penalize your site. The other things are more to convey trust, right, and to avoid security issues, of course, and they're low-hanging fruit. There's also a Nux security module that you can use to set some of the defaults there, and it's super helpful. All right, basic security, there we go. The next thing, mobile friendliness, right? It is important, it's a technical task. We get lots of traffic, and it's a must-have, because once again, it's also important for ranking. And why is that? Well, Google is nowadays crawling with the emulated mobile setup by default. So they won't crawl in desktop by default, but with the mobile screen. And if then things are hard to read, or there are some issues, that's not good. So this is indeed a ranking factor. So mobile friendliness. Even if you say, hey, our users are all desktop, we only have 1% mobile, it's still important for SEO. And then we have the Core Web Vitals. Yeah, we've heard a lot about it, of course. It's a big thing, and these are so-called essential metrics for a healthy site, right? We also know, yeah, Lighthouse score and so on, but Core Web Vitals are the important parts here, and they are also ranking factors. Also, one note on that, the FID, the first input delay, will be replaced soon by ENP, so interaction to next paint, another metric to optimize for. Will happen 2024, so very soon. And once again, you also see the Core Web Vitals, for example, on the Google Search Console, if you check out your project, and then they say, oh, there are some URLs not doing well, there's maybe some layout shift, and there are lots of techniques how to improve these values. Another thing we should always enable, and it's also very easy, is text compression. So text compression is a must-have once again for every page out there. The good thing is, usually if you host it somewhere, you get gzip by default, right? No-brainer, all fine. Unless you set up the server yourself, but even there, it's not that difficult. And then there's Broadly, which is way faster and also leads to smaller files, so a win-win, kind of. And if you have that enabled on some platforms, you have to tick a box, some do it automatically, and you can use websites like broadly.pro to check your site and figure out if it has it enabled or not. Otherwise, it's just a flag away. And the good part is, this improves page speed, because it will compress the static assets like HTML and JavaScript from your site, and the browser will decompress them there. And with Broadly, so you have less bandwidth to send over to a client, and you also get thus a faster result. And if you use Nuxt, once again, we compress all the static assets by default, and there are also some options to go even deeper in there. So commonly, if you have like a non-static site, you do that on the fly, and that's usually where your web server or platform provider comes in. But you can also say, okay, I generate everything statically. I generate like the Broadly and gzip files beforehand on the highest level, then it's even faster. All right, and then we come to broken links and redirects. Like it's a very common thing. You go on a website and think, that guide, amazing. That's a great headline. Look, you click on it and 404. Nah. Great. And if you have that scenario where you change links because, oh yeah, I migrate my website from WordPress to a shiny new Vue application, I understand that fully. You have to be careful with the linking structure, right? So please don't link to broken pages, right? Make sure that you have some kind of redirects in place if there are broken pages. So either redirect them to new content, or make sure, hey, that content is gone for whatever reason, and maybe put them to the closest page. Also, if you have some redirect chains because you made some migrations here and there, avoid these, right? A to B to C, just redirect A to C straight away. So especially if you want to migrate and migrate. So it helps a lot to check that. And once again, you can set up the redirect either through your web server or platform provider. You can also do that in Nuxt through route rules that we've seen before. And that's really, really helpful. Especially you can also say, let's crawl my old site while it's still up, get all the links, and then make a little Excel sheet, let's say, or a little table, say, okay, old to new doesn't match. I did it multiple times, and it's really helpful, so you don't forget any kind of links, and users won't be frustrated and just leave your page. All right. And then canonical links. Who of you knows what canonical links are? 1, 2, 3. The same 5 people again. Okay, good. Perfect. I'll give you a little heads up there. That's also a really important thing because you should set a canonical link for every page. It kind of tells search engines what is the preferred version or the preferred URL of the site. So if you have some kind of duplicate content, you also define the same URL there. It's very important for trading slash enforcement, so you know pages have a slash at the end or not, and that's kind of up to you how you want that or how your platform does that. But in the end, you should set something like that. Link, rel, canonical, and then you give the href saying, let's say, abc.com shoes. Also, if you have some temporary page that just links to the same thing, and you have that for other purposes, promo or so, you should there set the canonical link to match. Because otherwise it could happen that both, if they have exactly the same content, appear in Google, and instead of one site being on top 1, maybe there are 2 sites on 3 and 5, which gives you way less traffic and results. And also, as I said, the canonical link conversion can be really helpful here. So your web server should handle all these. HTTP and www in front, no www with a trading slash, and all the HTTPS versions for that as well. So that's not a big deal. And then you have your front end, or, well, Vue, that should handle the rest. So, of course, you want HTTPS. And now, should we remove query parameters? Are they important? Should we remove the fragment? Yeah, you should. If you use query params, if they're important, you have to stay with them. That's also fine. And yeah, make sure you set it in the end to something that represents the website. Okay. And once again, it's up to you to say trading slash yes or no, www in front, yes or no. It's really fine, but be consistent. Don't do, oh, one side this, one side that. Just decide for version. It really doesn't matter as long as you stay consistent. Okay. There is lots of more, like asset optimization is a very important part. You can use, for example, Nuxt image or service like Cloudinary and so on, and Nuxt picture and picture tag to do responsive images. There are lots of talks about it, so I'll skip a bit over that because that could be a whole talk in itself, right? So performance is a very big thing. Once again, lazy loading, code splitting, caching, and so on, and also using descriptive file names for images. Don't call it image 1, image 2. Actually say what the images are there, similar to what you do in your alt text, but they're just for like URL with dash separate. And talking about URL, well, URL structure is a big thing too, right? So you want to use short and descriptive URLs. It's very important. Remove some kind of stop words like and, the, because they don't add any value, right? And also here comes in the trading slash enforcement once again, which is very helpful. And you want to have your keywords in there. As I mentioned before, query parameters are, well, if you can avoid them, if you need them for like filtering, sure, bring them in there. And use hyphens as delimiters. And once again, decide on non-www or www. So let's go for some examples. Let's say abc.com, question mark ID is some ID, not really nice. Okay, we improved that a bit, no query params. Now the .html, still, what is behind there? Nobody knows. And then we can do better. And here we say, that's linked to a blog post about benefits of, okay, easy. Now I can see it. Great, but still not good. And we're doing better. We're doing better. Getting there? Yeah, perfect. Slash blog, so you know, okay, it's a blog post. Nice. And then benefits of Nuxt. Very straight, very on point. Nothing too crazy. So make sure your URLs are descriptive and short. And then we have this, meta tags, right? So on page, effort depends a bit what you did already. And if you have a Google like search result page like this, you see the pink part and the yellow part, right? So you want to find the ideal title and meta description for each page. Meaning, try a few things out, see how they're doing, see how users clicking on that. And UTF-HR set as well as the initial viewport should be set. That's already happening by default. And you will do a bit of testing, what works, what doesn't work. That's fine. And also always use OG tags to improve links and previews. So this is already set by default in Nuxt. That's the nice part. We can add any kind of meta tags for use hat or use SEO meta thanks to Unhat, which is a great library. It's actually framework agnostic. It's a universal document tag manager. It's tiny, it has full TypeScript support, and it's also in the wonderful Unjs collection there. So it's part of the NGS ecosystem, and it's framework agnostic, as I mentioned. We can use it in Nuxt. You can use it with usehat and Vue as well. And how you can set that? Well, you can use SEO meta. Very simple to say, hey, we have maybe even a reactive title over there. If that changes, we could change it, but we don't need reactivity for that. As soon as you have your content, you don't really want to adapt that necessarily, because if you go to the next page, that will update. And yeah, then set the rest, like the OG title, the descriptions, and so on and so on. And that's pretty simple. You can even look up in the dev tools what exactly each of these tags is doing and how to, like what tags are missing. And it's enough for most basic scenarios, so that should be a good baseline. You can also use server SEO meta to only set it on the server to reduce the bundle size a bit. They don't need that composable. And there's another one called usehat for more advanced things. Like you see, it's a bit more verbose, but it's also more flexible. Let's add some attributes to body. Let's add some scripts inline maybe if you want to. So that's also very helpful. And it's more for advanced scenarios, so to say. Okay, and I see time is running. There's way more to discover, but yeah, we can talk about. Okay, let's do this. Let's talk about semantic HTML. Use semantic HTML. This is very important, very, very important, because please don't choose semantic tags because styling. Like, oh, there's a button, it has default styles. I'd rather choose a div. That's fine. No, it's not. It's not fine. Don't use like an AH6 because it's smaller and fits exactly your needs. No, please don't, really. And ideally, what I would always suggest is using an aggressive CSS reset, like for example, Tailwind does it, because then you're not tempted. Everything looks the same. You don't worry about it. Also, please use HTML5 tags where applicable, like header, main, footer, and so on, nav. And please use actual link tags like anchor tags, Nuxt link, router link, and buttons instead of divs and some on-click handler. Please don't do this. Wait, I'll show it again. Don't do this, please. Okay, do this instead, right? This is way easier to write. Okay, so once everybody, please, all together, 3, 2, 1, use. Awesome. You'll remember that when you wake up at 3 a.m., be like, shit, I need to refactor the div. Yeah. Okay, so semantic HTML, alt text, also very, very important, also for accessibility. Here we are back at the user-focused part, but sorry, not that much time, but it's very important. Please add alt text to your images. Page structure, heading structure, like don't use an H6, but always have an H1. Setting up a sitemap, structured data, robots.txt, hreflang, there's way, way more. Yeah, so you can look that up. I share the slides in the end, don't worry. But there's a life hack. There is the Nuxt SEO module, which also was called Nuxt SEO Kit. V2 is in beta right now, and there's a website for that. It's maintained by one of our core team members, Harlan. He's pretty amazing. And that module includes the following. It includes a sitemap setup, very simple for your site, robots.txt for maintaining that, schema.org, and structured data, some experiments that you can enable, and also you can generate OG images on the fly if you want to. In addition, it checks your links with a link checker. So there are lots of things you can try out. It's really worth it. You don't have to use all of that. I use quite a few of these, for example, on my website too. Also, other people building Nuxt websites as well. And we come to an end almost on time. I also want to thank to my sponsors. Thanks to them, I can do a bit of open source. And I thank you for your attention. Thanks, everybody.
What's happening?
Slides are over there, by the way. I will also post them on Twitter and LinkedIn and wherever. So, yeah.
Okay. Thank you very much for that, Alex. So we have time for one question, or 10 if you want to skip lunch.
Please no.
Do we have one question?
Thank you for your presentation. I have a question. What about, you said at first for content behind authentication, but sometimes, or most of the times, it's still important to have SEO. So what would be, like to have some kind of preview of the item you wish to have SEO from?
So as soon as it's behind authentication, you can't do much because Google can't crawl it anyway. But what I suggest usually if you have like the SaaS application, you still, for example, want to change the title of your tab to reflect what is actually in. Are you on your profile page, or are you on the products page, or are you on the edit page? So that's very important. But from really search engine optimization, you can't do much there because it's hidden and it's protected. And probably will also, if you just share the link, redirect to login. But then your login page at least should tell you, hey, this is the login page of your SaaS.
But to have a like scoped out version of that page, would it be something to
I mean,
that's what we did, and I'm.
You can do that, of course. Like that still counts a bit more like, okay, you have an anonymous page, like for users that are not logged in. I don't know, let's say you have a course platform, want to preview some courses. That's totally valuable. Yeah, that's valid, absolutely.
Okay, well, thanks.
Of course, thank you.
Awesome. Thank you very much for that. Please give a hand to Alex for his amazing presentation.
Thanks, Alex.